Documents obtained by the government watchdog group White Coat Waste Project shows that President Biden's nominee to be new director of the NIH told Senator Rand Paul she supports gain-of-function research and funding animal labs in China. She also refused to commit to improving oversight of foreign animal labs. Dr. Monica Bertagnoli's admission came during a hearing held on Capitol Hill in recent weeks, where senators grilled her on her record and on her views. Now, she's expected to receive a Senate vote on her nomination to lead the National Institutes of Health this week. Joining us now to weigh in is White Coat Waste Project Senior Vice President Justin Goodman. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me, Robbie.
So this issue of gain-of-function research funding and lab safety is at the center of the COVID-19 origins debate, and even what we should do moving forward. This is the figure who will be in the position to guide what the policies are, what the funding is. How concerned should we be that she does not take this fear the American people have about this research seriously?
Well, I think Bertagnoli's responses to Rand Paul's question should raise a red flag for anyone, whether they're concerned with national security, wasteful spending, preventing another pandemic, or frankly, NIH's abuse of dogs and experiments in the United States and abroad. You know, after the NIH nightmare that we've experienced over the past few years, any NIH director should certainly not tolerate funding dangerous, unaccountable animal labs run by our foreign enemies that are doing experiments that place public health in peril. Yet her responses to Rand Paul indicate she is fully in line with the NIH status quo and totally out of step, not only with science, but what the American people want.
Do you think that there's a world where there is funding that goes towards gain-of-function research? It's definitely not a new problem. I mean, there have been bans on gain-of-function research before by NIH as to whether or not they're going to provide funding, dating back to 2011, the H5N1 virus, around bird flu. There have been all kinds of controversies and a lot of back and forth and lack of consensus within the research community as to whether or not the benefits of this research outweighs, potential problems caused and potential outbreaks of new viruses, not just the ones we're trying to develop vaccines for. Is there a world where there's funding given with additional restrictions that you think would be satisfactory, or do you think we should most likely end all gain-of-function research due to the negative consequences outweighing the potential benefits?
That's a great question. I mean, our position is that the costs definitely outweigh the benefits. You know, Monica Bertagnoli in her comments to Rand Paul said that there's potential great benefit of manipulating potential pandemic pathogens in laboratories. There's literally no evidence of that. That's just a talking point from the virology community. There has been no situation in which a pandemic has been prevented or stemmed due to dangerous gain-of-function experiments with pandemic pathogens. We only know of one situation, the one we're now still living through, where a pandemic was actually caused by one. So I think what the Biden-Obama administration did back in 2014 to defund these programs was wise. I think there's no reason why we shouldn't do it again. And I think the COVID pandemic is a perfect example of that. At the very least, there needs to be more transparency and the bar needs to be very, very high. The only people advocating for more gain-of-function research are the ones lining their pockets doing it.
And talk to us about increased lab safety. I know this is something your group has worked on in other contexts, including the experiments on animals under horrific conditions. You know, it seems like the scientific establishment, the government funding establishment, just rejects out of hand any idea that there would be more oversight and accountability for these kinds of experiments. That's even the case now with a manipulation of viruses in foreign labs? She won't commit to greater standards for the places these things are done?
Shocking, but true. Yeah, last year we exposed an illegal NIH loophole. Basically, the federal law since 1985 says that any animal lab getting money from the NIH, whether in the US or abroad, needs to have certain oversight in place. The NIH wrote an illegal loophole for all foreign labs, a blanket loophole, saying that none of them have to abide by any of the animal welfare, biosafety, or oversight standards of US laboratories, including even having inspections. The NIH is fighting us in court right now, saying that they can do what they want, and this isn't illegal, but it clearly is. Rand Paul asked Bertagnolli about this in his questions for the record during the nomination process, and she said she supports the current rules that are in place to oversee foreign laboratories. So what we have now, just to make it abundantly clear, is the US government has shipped billions of dollars to animal labs in China, Russia, and other foreign countries, so adversarial nations as well as others over the last few years. And there is literally no oversight into what is happening in those laboratories to animals, how our money is being spent, if it's being used by evil forces in these laboratories for other purposes. We have no idea. It's a complete black box, and apparently the NIH nominee is not worried about that.
So it sounds like a lot of the scientists that have been pursuing gain-of-function research see that it's going to be necessary in the future to develop vaccines, more advanced vaccines to address new viruses that come about. Is there a concern that if the NIH pulls funding, federal funding, government funding from supporting gain-of-function research, that then these labs will seek funding from other sources, potentially pharmaceutical companies that might enforce less restrictions than the NIH could if they had funding and had some pull over how these research labs conduct themselves and how the research goes?
Well, there was an oversight hearing either last week or the week before in the House Select Committee on the coronavirus pandemic. Bipartisan hearing, commentary from both Democrats and Republicans in Congress. And they had testifying Gerald Parker, who's the head of basically the biosecurity committee that oversees gain-of-function policy. And his comments to the committee were that we do not need gain-of-function research with potential pandemic pathogens to develop vaccines and do research. So he is the person who oversees gain-of-function policy, and he is of the belief that we do not need to be doing this type of gain-of-function research to get safe and effective vaccines and cures to people. And he's not in a minority. A lot of people believe that, and they believe that if that is going to happen, it really needs strict oversight. What happened in Wuhan, basically we had a situation where we outsourced dangerous research that wouldn't have been allowed here. It potentially caused a pandemic and no one's been held accountable. That has to change.
Justin Goodman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.